Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan Schott joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. Hopefully, everyone had a wonderful day. It was another gorgeous day across the Ohio Valley, and a lot of what we saw today is just on repeat. Yes, it's a broken record, but a lot of the same weather that we had coming off this weekend continuing throughout this week. The big difference, though, and it's going to be more on a daily basis for the most part, these temperatures, the humidity, they're slowly creeping up. So you may have noticed by today, it's not as cool, comfortable as it was for this weekend. It's starting to pick up with those temperatures and humidity, but by no means was it hot and humid today. And as we do look ahead going through much of this week, it's not hot and humid. However, that being said, as we get into the weekend, this is when those temperatures are going to start to pick up a bit more, and it will turn towards the hot side by the weekend. That will likely carry over into early next week. During this stretch, even despite temperatures picking up, the humidity still remains tolerable. So no real humid days ahead through the weekend. We look ahead going into next week is when we'll likely start to spot more rain chances and more unbearable to uncomfortably humid conditions. So the humidity can start to turn a bit more excessive as rain chances really ramp up. But it's not for this week. That is going to be for next week. So again, a lot of this week, the weather does remain quiet. Our current temperatures right now across the area falling into the 70s, and much like what we had for this morning, tomorrow morning, it lows back towards the mild side going into the morning hours. We look across the tri-state area, and as you can see, there have been some stray showers that developed, and this can be a pretty good preview of what we can see as we go through the week. So our rain chance is 0 this week? No. But what's the likely scenario? Well, just something stray is possible, just like what we're seeing. Those stray showers east of Pittsburgh, north of Pittsburgh, northwest of us towards the south of Cleveland, towards Mansfield area. These stray showers is what we can see. So, but just like today, mainly, if not completely, dry conditions will hold. So there is little to no rain in the forecast as we go even through the weekend. Those slight chances that you see there account for that potential for something stray, just like what we're seeing develop, not over us, but near us today, right? That could have been over us. That stray shower potential is there on a daily basis. But again, most of us remain dry. And even those that do pick up something stray, likely not going to amount to much in terms of rainfall amounts as we go into the weekend. So again, very quiet stretch of weather. By next week is when rain chances will likely further pick up. We'll have the better odds for some showers and thunderstorms starting Tuesday, continuing then going into the second half of next week. I do anticipate next week to be much more unsettled, more humid with respect to what we're dealing with this week, and ultimately warmer as well. So next week can be more of what we dealt with for a lot of July and the end of June, where it starts to get back to uncomfortably to unbearably humid. We start to deal with those daily scattered showers and thunderstorms. We start to deal with some very warm to hot temperatures. That can be for next week. But again, for this week, does not look excessively humid. It does turn hot by the weekend, but again, not excessively humid. Rain chances look low. We still continue this quiet pattern, at least for this week, as we go through the weekend. We look at those dew points, and with respect to what we dealt with this weekend and today, they'll pick up some. I mean, it does turn a bit humid, but again, it's more tolerable. It's more manageable. That's the humidity levels in place going into Thursday that will continue through the weekend. So despite it turning hot by Saturday, Sunday, with highs near, if not around 90, the humidity remains more tolerable. So it's not going to feel a whole lot warmer than it already is. So again, it does start to turn, those temperatures, they become a bit excessive. It's hot, 90 plus. The heat's a bit excessive at that point. But the humidity does not ramp up with those temperatures, at least for the weekend. Again, I think that story changes for next week. Those highs early next week will likely continue to be around 90, and those temperatures start to trend cooler as scattered showers and thunderstorms look even more likely for the middle to latter part of next week. That additional cloud cover, those showers and thunderstorms, that's what can start to trend us cooler. But keep in mind, at that point, it's uncomfortable to unbearably humid likely. So dew points are back near, if not into the 70s. And as we fall back in the 80s, you factor in that higher humidity at that point later next week, and it will likely feel like it's in the 90s, despite highs being possibly more mid upper 80s Wednesday, Thursday, and into Friday. And in fact, we look at that heat index forecast as it does start to turn a touch humid Thursday. But when you're still dealing with more tolerable humidity levels Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's not feeling a whole lot warmer than the actual air temperature. So the heat index is pretty close to on par with what the actual air temperature is. So again, thankfully that it's not going to be a big factor as we go through the weekend. By Monday, I think it does start to become more of a factor. We start to get in that range of uncomfortably humid by Monday. And again, going into Wednesday, we can start to get to that unbearably humid category. So as the humidity picks up next week, it does start to become a more of a factor, and we'll see that Monday likely. High still near 90, but it can feel a handful of degrees warmer than the actual air temperature starting Monday. And once we see the humidity further pick up, it become even more than a handful of degrees warmer is how warmer it can feel. Okay, that's going into the middle to latter part of next week. That's why I say even though highs are mid-upper 80s, it can feel into the 90s in the latter part of next week once we see that humidity pick up. But at least here near term, before we get to more rain, before we get to more humid days and warm/hot days, this weather is still looking nice. And if you take what we had for today, it's almost on repeat. It really is almost on repeat. Wednesday, Thursday, those highs, those lows, they look very similar with respect to today for Wednesday as well as Thursday. By Friday, Saturday, temperatures start to pick up more. It starts to become hotter into the afternoon. Humidity, though, still not bad, right? By Sunday, it's hot. It's hot. We're around 90. Still not too bad when it comes to the humidity. Still looking mostly dry as we go through the weekend. And then Monday, the humidity, we start to notice it more. And it starts to feel further in the 90s. It starts to be much more unpleasant to be outside in. It starts to become, uncomfortably humid as well as hot on Monday. And then Tuesday into Wednesday, it picks up even more. That's when we can get to that range of even unbearably humid at times. And with those highs still well in the 80s, 90s, it's going to feel well in the 90s likely. Tuesday, and then Wednesday, it'll start to feel even into the 90s, despite those highs likely trending a bit cooler. We have better odds for those showers and thunderstorms Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday with respect to what we're going to see even into Tuesday of next week. But yes, rain chances are going to be picking up next week. Better odds for those showers and thunderstorms while it's still scattered. Better odds to see them in our area for next week as it's turning more uncomfortable to unbearably humid while still remaining very warm to hot next week. And again, here near term, that 20% chance, we can't quite rule out something stray. We saw it in the tri-state area today. It's just, again, it was more east, north, west of us, but something stray of a shower, it can't be ruled out. It is possible, but just keep in mind, these are still mainly dry, if not completely dry days in our area. And if you deal with that shower, and nothing that's going to be putting a big damper on anything that you want to be doing outdoors as we go through the weekend and during the stretch, just like today, a decent amount of sun. Some clouds in the mix like today, but a good amount of sunshine in general likely as we go through the weekend. So not a bad stretch of weather. That is for sure. Joe, good evening. Thanks for doing this for us. Appreciate it. Well, thank you, Joe, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Good evening, Austin. Not looking forward to the mugginess to return, and I'm praying that it won't reach unbearable. Today was a good day. I can't wait for the leaves to start changing colors. Austin, looking forward to fall, and I'm sure it'll be here before we know it, right? And that's the cliche, right? That's how the saying goes. But I think it often rings true, doesn't it? But yeah, and we'll see. We'll even start to notice some evidence of that later this month once we start to see those earlier sunsets. We'll get back by the 29th of this month. The sun will set before 8 p.m. So we start to notice some of those earlier evenings, and we'll see. We had a little taste, certainly, of fall here as of recent, coming off of this weekend. Now we're getting back to, a taste of what we had for July, a lot of July, as well as the end of June for next week and by this weekend. But yeah, we certainly had it. I think some people call it the false fall, and then the second summer is now upon us before actual fall arrives, right? That's how the saying goes? Is that how the multiple seasons go? I think I've heard that before. We're in the fall. We had that false fall, that little preview, and now we're back to summer, and maybe we'll see start to settle into fall. maybe as we get into the end of the month into September. At least here near term, this pattern does look warm and does look more wet going into the second half of this month. As we look ahead in the next 10 days, taking us in the middle of the month, that's when it, as you can see, will start to turn more humid, better rain chances, very warm, hot, and that can carry over into the second half of the month. We'll see, though. Maybe we'll into September, maybe we'll get back into another cool pattern like what we just had later on into the month. Thanks for the weather. Beverly, you are very welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Gorgeous stretch of weather, isn't it? And this is our longest dry stretch that we've had. We're finally settling into that summer dry stretch. This is by far going to be the longest that we've had for this summer. And again, good odds that we can see the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport reach 7 days with no measurable precipitation. That would be Thursday. And if we include the Sunday, that's 10 days in a row. If we include Monday, that's 11 days in a row. Now, most that we've had so far for this year is 11. That's back in January. 10 days was back in April. So that was a lot. Last time we had a week plus stretch of no measurable precipitation was April. This is the longest dry stretch that we've had here in the for the Ohio Valley. Specifically looking at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, the longest stretch of no measurable precipitation for months. We have to go back into April and possibly rivaling the longest. Again, even no guarantee next Tuesday, but the rain chances at that point are starting to pick up. We'll see. We'll see if we could sneak in possibly the longest stretch so far for the year with no measurable precipitation at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Going to be interesting to see how long we can keep the stretch going. Starting on the 1st, last Friday, now continuing for today, and we'll see how long we can prolong this. Good odds for at least a week, but maybe we can even get double digits, 10 plus days, quite possible as we go through the weekend. So it is a quiet stretch of weather, quiet stretch, and still more pleasant the next couple of days. Starts to turn hot by the weekend, and then it starts to turn not only hot, but humid early next week. And that humidity likely just further picks up, even though temperatures can start to trend cooler due to the cloud cover and precipitation with those scattered showers and thunderstorms later next week. But the humidity likely even gets worse later next week. And that being said, it's still going to feel hot to us and humid. Again, very similar. I think it can be very similar to what we had dealt with for a lot of July with those scattered showers and thunderstorms to contend with in the afternoon, evening hours, and just getting back to unbearably humid. It's quite possible, in addition to just being very warm to hot, right? Sounds very similar to what we just experienced for over a month going into the end of July from the end of June. And thankfully, Mother Nature giving us this nice period of more comfortable weather to start off August with before it does likely return going throughout next week. Thanks so much for tuning into this edition of Nate at 8. I appreciate it, as always. You can catch me coming up News 9 at 10 on Fox 9. News 9 tonight at 11 for the latest, and as always for that next edition of Nate at 8 as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see all of you on the next edition of Nate at 8.